You'll know the target when the enemy starts shooting. Hey, everybody, welcome to The Whole Truth, where I am taking you through the entire Bible, and we are not skipping anything. So if that sounds good to you, reach down and hit the little subscribe button below. And today I have a very special message for us. And so it'll be a little different than the typical Bible studies that I've been doing, only sticking with the main text where I'm trying to go through the whole chapter. And I'll probably get back to that. I'm not trying to change formats, but I just see something in what I'm about to read with you today as we get into 1 Samuel chapter 13 in these first 4 verses that I honestly just thought it would be good to make a video to stand alone and deal with this topic instead of, mixing it into the whole chapter. And that is this, what I kind of just opened with, that you'll know you're over the target when the enemy starts shooting. And so we're about to read in the text as there's this king in Israel. He's the new king. It's King Saul. He establishes a proper army for Israel rather than the militia that they've had in the past. So here is Saul establishing a proper army, and then his son, Jonathan, has one of those armies or some of that army, and he attacks some of the Philistines, and the Philistines now will see Israel as a abomination, as a reproach. And let's see what happens. It's just 4 verses, but the practicality of what we're about to see when we apply it's a real story. When we apply the historical account from these first 4 verses of 1 Samuel 13, when we apply them in a spiritual sense to what we experience with our enemy, oh boy, it's powerful. Let's read it together. It's 1 Samuel chapter 13, just the first 4 verses. Let's read them together first. Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel, Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in the mountains of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. The rest of the people he sent away, every man to his tent. And Jonathan attacked the garrison of the Philistines that was in Gibeah. And the Philistines heard of it. Then Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." Now all Israel heard it said that Saul had attacked a garrison of the Philistines, and that Israel had become an abomination to the Philistines. And the people were called together to Saul at Gilgal. Saul establishes an army. He's the king. And then his son Jonathan attacks this one garrison of the Philistines. And now all of the Philistines see Israel as an abomination, as a reproach. And just one verse more, I'm going to deal with this one a little bit more in the next video, but just one more verse in verse 5. Then the Philistines gathered together to fight Israel, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. And they came up and encamped at Michmash to the east of Beth Aven. The Philistines' response, this reminds me of like when a child, you ever had a child doing something silly and, maybe they've got a towel or something and they snap the other child, and then the other child just goes berserk. They're punching and kicking and screaming and whatever because they just got snapped with a towel. And you're like, whoa, how did one equate to the other? There's one thing, sometimes my kids, one kid will punch the other one will punch the other one back, and I'll be like, you did it to each other. They'll be like, "Daddy, punch me." And I'm like, "Yeah, well," this was a long time ago. They're older than that now, but they'll be like, "Daddy, punch me," and I'd be like, "Well, you punched him back, so nothing I'm going to do now." But there were other times when it was like, somebody throws a ball and it hits somebody, and then they go berserk. And when they kind of go into that berserker mode, you're like, "Whoa, wait a minute! How do those two things equate? They snapped you with a towel, or they hit you with a ball, and now you're punching, kicking, and screaming and making a big old scene." And usually, then that person's the one who ends up getting in trouble. And so, anyways, my point is that that's what it kind of feels like here, but in a much grander way. The Philistines have been oppressing Israel this whole time. Even as Israel is establishing their king in Saul, the Philistines have still been the, if you will, the overlords. Even though it's not really their land, it's the Israelites' land at this point. It's the Israelites, it's their country, it's the nation of Israel. The Philistines are still the presiding force in that area. They're the ones who are in control. They're the ones who are oppressing Israel. And it seemed as if Israel was living in peace and safety. But what was peace? I want you to catch this. What was peace? Okay, they're not warring with the Philistines. They're not fighting the Philistines. They were at peace. I'm putting that in quotes if you're listening to this more than you're watching. You know, I'm doing my little air quotes here to be like, okay, they were in peace. But listen to this. They were not in freedom. They were not free. They just weren't like under the attack of the Philistines. The Philistines were not coming in and burning up the cities and doing this. Now, granted, there's been one attack, one punch, if you will, from Jonathan and this army of 1,000 that he has against a garrison of the Philistines. The Philistines come out in droves. In my mind, this looks like a scene of orcs in Lord of the Rings. I mean, this is a huge army that has come back to come against Israel because they attacked this garrison of the Philistines. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at there? Do you understand the point of what I'm leading you to? Like, there's this one attack from Israel under this new king and new army, and then, man, the Philistines come back like crazy. Why is that? Because the Israelite people were not in freedom. They were just in a state of peace. Can I have you look at a few verses in the Bible with me? Listen to these with me. This is Revelation chapter 3 and verse 15. I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I could wish that you were cold or hot. So then, because you are lukewarm and neither cold or hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth, because you say, I am rich, have become wealthy, and need nothing, and do not know that you are wretched and miserable, poor, blind, and naked. I want you to hear this. Lukewarmness is not safety. It's sickness toward God. Let that sink in. Lukewarmness is not safety. It is sickness toward God. God says, I'd rather you be cold or hot. I'd rather you be one or the other. But this idea that I'm going to just be neutral, this idea that I'm going to be in safety if I just don't do anything, that's not what God wants from us. Look at another verse of scripture with me. Look at 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 4. Whose minds the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ should shine on them. Listen, Satan is the prince of the power of the air, who is roaming on this earth, as we'll see here in a moment, seeking whom he may devour. And listen, he keeps the eyes of those who do not believe blinded to the truth. And so we cannot sit idly by as those who are blinded, those who are in darkness, are the ones who are calling the shots. Now, even more so, remember what we read in the scriptures, which is this, in James 4 and verse 7, therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Did you hear that? Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. I actually taught on that verse in church here recently. And when I taught on that verse, one of the things that I said was this: many people have just stopped resisting him. We kind of live under this like pretense. Christians tend to live under this pretense that says like, oh, well, I've tried before. I've tried to quit that before. I've tried to stop doing that before, and it's to no avail. I never get anywhere. I hear this all the time. I'll just use an example I hear all the time, which is guys dealing with pornography, men dealing with pornography. And they say, well, I've tried to quit before, and I'll do well for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, or maybe even I'll make it a month. And then all of a sudden I'll get hit with that temptation again, and I'll do the same thing again, and I'll slip back into those old ways again. And you can hear the defeat, even as I'm saying it like that. And that's probably not even as maybe forceful as some have spoken it to me. You can hear the kind of defeat, like, I've tried to quit, but I can't quit. The Bible says, the Word of God says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. The problem is many don't want to resist him. They don't try to resist him. They live, I hope you'll hear what I'm trying to say. They live at peace with him, as if like, I'm submitted to this idea that I can't stop that. I don't want to put whatever that is, because then it always gets misconstrued into saying that like that's what the whole message is about. Put your sin there. If you're living in a place of feeling defeated, listen, if you live in a place where you feel like, well, I mean, at least I'm not going through, like it's, at least it's not worse. Yeah, okay, so I've got this addiction with, again, the pornography example. Like I've got this addiction with pornography, but, my wife knows about it, and I try to keep it under control, and at least I don't look at this, at least I don't look at that, and we try to like live at peace with it. But friends, you better hear this. That is not freedom. What Jesus said is this: whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Now that's something I need you to believe. Do you believe that whom the Son sets free is free indeed? So when Jonathan attacked, what happened then when he attacked in verse 3? The Philistines came back with veracity. The Philistines demonstrated they've had a chip on their shoulder. They've had some pent up anger for a while, because the moment that they got struck, their one garrison. Now remember, the Philistines have attacked and oppressed Israel in many ways over the years, but now one attack from Israel on them, and the whole nation is coming against Israel. The whole nation of the Philistines has now rallied up against them after one attack on the garrison. Why is that? Well, here's what I need you to hear. Obedience towards God awakens spiritual warfare. Did you hear what I said there? Obedience towards God awakens spiritual warfare. When you pursue holiness, when you lead your family to righteousness, when you are trying to repent, and when you are trying to live a righteous life, the enemy is not going to passively sit by and idly sit by and act as if nothing is happening. Let me tell you something that happened to me. I've told this story a few times, but I'm going to share it again. And that is when I went to the library with my daughter. My wife had passed away. I was, working dad, and mom was at home with the kids. But then my wife passed away, and now I'm dad at home with the kids. And my 11-year-old daughter, maybe 10-year-old at the time daughter, came up to me and said, no, she was 11. And she said, Dad, I would like to read this summer. I'd like to read some books. Well, I'm like, man, yeah, my daughter wants to read. Success, like what a wonderful thing, like to help her to read. So I said, okay, well, we'll go up to the library. This was June. And so we went up to the library, and sure enough, what's all around is all of these Pride things. Well, I tried to ignore those, and we went past all the Pride Month things, and we went over to the juvenile department, and there in the juvenile department, the librarian came over and continually handed my daughter book after book after book, all of them full of LGBTQ garbage. Like one of them, like handed me a book called Queer Ducks. Handed my daughter a book. Handed my daughter a book with two young men on the cover looking like they were getting ready to kiss. Even though they were drawn, they were not a physical picture. It's still the fact you were pushing that agenda onto my daughter. I got so angry. I just told the librarian. I didn't yell or anything. I didn't make a scene. I just told the librarian, I said, we'll look for ourselves for a little bit. I'm looking around. I'm like, where's Black Beauty? Where's The Secret Garden? Where are the classics? What am I missing here? That we don't have any classic literature. All we have is all of this agenda-based sexual identity ideology stuff that we're trying to force on young people. But I'm telling you, like not a single classic novel in the library. Here I am in my county's public library, and don't come at me and be like, oh, you should have got the librarian and search for those. Y'all, listen, I shouldn't have to search through all the filth to try to get to something wholesome and decent. Okay. And so, we left. I took a picture of the books. I posted them on Facebook, and I just simply said, shame, shame, shame on you, Oldham County Public Library. I will not be back, with the picture of the books. All I said was, shame on you. I won't be back. Y'all, I literally have death threats saved. I've saved them. I have death threats on my Facebook Messenger from that post. I have threats against my children from that post because I said, shame on you. I won't be back. All I said. Now, people chimed in and they were like, we ought to do this. We ought to do that. People were like, they blamed me. They said, you're inciting violence. That's what they told me. They said, you're inciting violence. What did I do? I just said I won't be back. Do I not have a right as an American citizen to say I won't go back to the library that's going to push that type of stuff on my children? And do I not have a right to say this is what's in the library? I mean, if there's nothing wrong with it, why would you be ashamed of it? Why would it incite violence to say I'm not going to be back to something that I don't like? Oh, but it demonstrates something, doesn't it? They actually know. They know that what they're doing is wrong. They're just justifying it in their hearts. And you need to hear this. When you are obedient to the Lord, when you stand for what is righteous, when you stand for what is right, the enemy is going to attack. That's the whole point of what I'm trying to get at today. When you are under that attack, when the enemy comes against you that strong and that hard, don't take that as a sign to retreat because you've done something wrong. Friends, take that as a sign to say, I'm on the right track. I'm over the enemy's territory. And that's why the enemy is shooting. This is why I have one more example to talk about today, but I hope I'm encouraging you for maybe what you're going through and what you're facing as maybe you're trying to stand for what is right. There's another area that we've decided to stand for what is right, and that is I've led my church, as pastor of the church, I've led my church to begin a school. And our school is tuition-free, donation-based, open to the public for anyone to come in and to learn the message of Christ throughout our education. Do you know how angry I have made some folks around our community because I've opened a school? Now, I want you to hear this. I've opened a school that I say I. That sounded really terrible. It is not I. We have opened a school. Our church has opened a school. There's a board, and then our church has sacrificed so much. If you're part of Salt and Light and you're watching this, thank you for the sacrifices that you're making to make that mission possible. And there's people who are some of them not even part of our church, but are so in love with the mission, are working so hard because they recognize, they see the great need that we have. But I'm trying to tell you right now that the point I'm trying to get to is this. I'm saying but we've opened a school that we're not charging for. We're not making, there's no way we're making profit off of it. We're not charging tuition. We're taking up donations and using those donations to pay for teachers, to pay for staff, to pay for curriculum, all of the above, to pay for insurance, to go out. I mean, we got this huge playground equipment that we installed on our church property so that our school children would have a place to go out and to go meet. All we've done is opened a school. And I'm telling you, I have angered some in our community. So, I've had people leave the church over it. I've literally had people leave the church because we opened a school for students to come in and hear the gospel of Jesus in every subject. In our history, we want to hear about the providence of God. In our science, we want to hear about the magnificence and the awesomeness of our God and our Creator. We're teaching Christ in our subjects in every level of education from K through, and we'll get through 12. Right now we're K through 6, but we'll get through 12. And listen, people are angry. And it's not just that people are angry. It's because, well, goodness, you ready for me to say the truth? It's because their father's probably the devil and he's the father of lies. And they're blinded. Do you understand what I'm trying to say to you? Why would anybody be under a firestorm for starting a school? Why would anybody be under a firestorm for making it tuition free? Why would anybody be under a firestorm for opening it to the public? You better hear this, because when you get over the enemy's target, the enemy's territory, the enemy starts to fire. You'll come under fire, but don't let that be something that turns you away and makes you run. Let that be a place where you can say, I have confirmation that I'm doing the thing that is right. I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. Don't run from the fight. When the enemy starts to fire, know this: the one who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. If God's called you to do it, then he will see you through it. Don't forget what I'm trying to show you today. Don't back down just because things are getting hard, just because the fire is coming at you. Stand strong for what God has called you to do. Stand up for what is right. Of course, the enemy is going to attack, but don't forget, remember what we've read: resist the devil and he will flee from you. All right, I hope you all enjoyed this video over 1 Samuel chapter 13, verses 1-4. Come back tomorrow, and we're going to see what happens with the rest of the story as Saul basically loses the kingdom because of the stuff that he does. All right, I'll see you guys then.